Hi guys, my name is Gerry, I'm from Wild Eye, and this is episode 3 of the series in which you could ask your wildlife photography questions. Let's get right into it.
Yael Shami asked on Instagram, what is your favorite location to take pictures? And how do you get a contract or job deal as a wildlife photographer?
Wow, favorite location to take pictures? That's an interesting question. And again, I'm probably going to answer it with another question, is what type of images am I after? See, people ask, what's your favorite lens? To photograph what? You see, I think from an all-round photographic wildlife experience, the Masai Mara is very difficult to beat, purely because I think the landscape allows for you to find, see, and photograph more animals easier than a lot of other places. The landscapes in southern Africa, depending again where you go, can be quite bushy and thickets, so it's difficult to get clean, clear shots that a lot of people seem to be wanting. Yeah, clean lion type thing. But favorite location, sure. Svalbard for me is very difficult to beat because it's so foreign. It takes me out of a comfort zone. It takes me to a place where every little color, every line, every bit of light is interesting, holds some kind of fascination. If I'm after elephants, Chobe's great because you get low angle, you can get close to the ellies. Favorite location, if I had to pick one, I'm finding this very difficult to think on the fly. Jono, Mara, huh? Mara, Penny? Favorite location to take pictures in? Mara. Okay, there's a lot of Masai Mara around, so I'm going to go with group pressure and say that. Also, I'm going there in a couple of weeks, which helps. But yeah, I think favorite destination it's a place that speaks to you. It's a place where your type of photography maybe you can what's the word? You can showcase your type or your style of photography there. But if anybody's looking for a starting place, good, solid wildlife, everything, open shots, I would go Masai Mara. Final answer. Second part of your question is an interesting one, is how do you get a contract or a job as a wildlife photographer? Now, in episode 1, which I will link up here, we did discuss wildlife photography as a job. And again, short recap, there's very few people out there making a job purely as a wildlife photographer. You're looking at some of the Nat Geo adventurers or explorers and residents, I think they call them. You're going to go a long way to find a job or a contract. Stock photography, magazines, those kind of contracts, pretty easy to get. And it's going to come back to the social media question, which was also answered in episode 1, where put your work out. I'm getting so excited about your question. Throw your work out regularly. Be consistent. Only put your best work out. And then you have to get proactive. Approach magazines, approach publishers, and get your work and your name known. Maybe from there you get lucky. But as a pure wildlife photographer, it's a tough one to do.
Audrey Moe asked on Instagram, what did you do to get where you are now, such as college majors and schools?
Audrey, interesting question this. Thank you. It raises an interesting topic that I had a discussion with someone about yesterday. How did it get to where you are now? You see, for me, personally, I don't find myself anywhere right now. This is part of a journey for me. I know where I want to get to with my photography and with the business and with the safaris we run. So for me, it's a journey. What's interesting is a lot of people, when they start in this, wildlife photography as such, they want to call themselves a professional wildlife photographer. It's complete bullshit. But let me tell you why. Because most of those people who call themselves that have a day job, they do other things, then they run 1 or 2 tours or safaris or workshops, whatever they call it, and now they're suddenly a professional. I don't see myself as a professional. How did I get here? I think passion. I think you have to love what you do to excel in it. If it feels like work, stop doing it, find something else. With what we do, yes, I do take a lot of images and I'm out in the field with guests all the time, and I love what I do. I think that's driven it. More than that, hard work, I think, hey? Keep your head down and just keep grinding away. That's how you get to where you want to go. Not just wildlife photography, in life. I think, second part of your question, major schools and colleges for wildlife photography. Off the top of my head, Andrew, can you think of something? A school for wildlife photography? No. Short answer. I can't think of a single school or college that runs a wildlife photography degree, diploma, certificate course that will get you to a working stage. I did correspondence courses through New York Institute of Photography and then one when I came back to South Africa. And from then on, it's my passion for wildlife combined with passion for photography, and that ran it out from there. So I'm sure there are diploma courses. I mean, we run a wildlife photography course, which we give you the basics, but we tell the people on this course as well. Same as with our Lightroom and our digital photography course. I tell the people, you're going to learn a lot of stuff on this course, but you're going to learn more the moment you walk away. So it's only a foundation. If any of you, interesting, if any of you out there know of colleges and schools specifically for wildlife photography that makes you a wildlife photographer, which links back to the previous question, let me know. I'll be very interested to kind of scratch around and see what comes out of that. Audrey, great question. Thank you.
Simon asked on email, as you are a wildlife photographer, how would you define wildlife? Maybe there is a difference between wildlife and wildlife, or is that too technical?
Simon, thank you. This is your question now. And I asked the wildlife team in the office here to help me with this one and share their thoughts. Now, I did include a screen grab of this, but watch this. Wildlife, I'm just going to read what Simon has here. The weaver that nests in my garden uses material from trees I planted, eats seeds that I put out, and drinks water from a water feature which I install. A lion in the Pilanesberg catches his own food and drinks from a natural pool but is fenced in. Is he wild? An impala which lives in a nature reserve with no predators, is it wild? Here's what the team had to say.
Awesome, Simon. Thanks for that question. Yeah, a challenging one, but I think it's going to draw a lot of opinions and a lot of personal responses and feelings. To me, you mentioned being a cow being wildlife or something like that. I think if you look at something domesticated versus animals naturally occurring within an area being introduced or not introduced into an area. If you take Kruger National Park, where the lion prides that have been there have always been there. Yes, there are man-made waterholes. Yes, the areas are burnt. There's many factors, human factors that influence their behavior and where they move and so forth, but they're still wild. They still live there. They hunt on their own. Whereas something like a cow, I guess, that to me, it's not quite on the same page. So I'm not going to go too much into that. So for me, wildlife, something within an area occurring naturally, self-sustaining, Kruger National Park, Madikwe, private game reserves where they've been introduced, all those animals look after themselves and in a form wildlife to me. The birds that come and drink from your garden or that you feed on a daily basis, yes, still wildlife, still an animal that is free. It can go where it wants. It can move when it wants to. Yes, you do feed it, but it doesn't rely exclusively on you. If you had to move away, it'll still feed on its own and still survive in all likelihood. But for me personally, I don't think about it in too much depth. To me, photography or photographing of wildlife still comes down to going to a wild area, be it Kruger, be it Madikwe, be it Zimbabwe or Kenya, photographing wildlife within a natural habitat, within the areas that they rely on their own instincts and abilities to hunt, to look after themselves, to raise their young. I think in its simplest form, that to me is wildlife. Thanks, Simon. Hope that answers your question.
Morning, Simon. Thanks so much for that question, particularly on a Monday morning. It's something I really look forward to having to answer on a Monday morning, so I'd like you to thank you for that. Marlon gave his answer a little while ago, and yeah, there was some merit in what he said, but a little bit wishy-washy. My feeling, and sorry Marlon, apologies, but I have told him that anyway. So wildlife areas that we have today, using South Africa as an example, obviously the degradation of wildlife and natural habitats have been caused by human intervention, humans requiring more land, animals having to be protected from humans, from persecution. So we've had to put fences around wildlife destinations. Otherwise, the wild animals, as they were in their original form many centuries ago, where they roam free. Unfortunately, in the world, in Africa, there's very few, if any, true wild destinations. So are they particularly wild? Because let's use Madikwe, for example, 70,000 hectares, got a fence around it. Do I like driving fence lines in Madikwe? No, I don't. But I understand that it's got its place. And in order to protect the species, we've had to put fences around the area. We've certainly had to put in water holes that can feed the animals, that can sustain sustain them, and that they can grow and obviously produce more and all those good things. But it does come with its issues. If you go to minor pools, for example, totally wild area, but there has been human intervention in a place like minor pools. But do you ask yourself the question, for how many centuries has there been human intervention in wildlife? Centuries ago, early inhabitants of Africa would kill wildlife to sustain themselves. So are they still wild? Yes, I think they are still wild. There are areas of Kenya that are where there's no fences, and particularly I love those areas. There's areas where you can go there and they are visited by very, very few human beings every single year. It's almost like you go back in time and visit these places. But there's a sense of tourism. There's a sense of obviously there's poaching. There's other external factors. But at the end of the day, it's a sign, and it's the time that we live in. But do I still look at it as wildlife? Absolutely. I think we've got to understand that the dynamics of the world we live in have changed over the centuries, so unfortunately that's the way it is. Is a cow wildlife? Not. Is a impala in a reserve that's controlled, drinking out of a man-made waterhole, is it wildlife? Absolutely.
So I believe I left the office on an urgent phone call, and I was called out by my boss, Jono, and to that I have to say the following. So, in my honest opinion, there are no wildlife areas, okay? So for me personally, I do not believe that there's a single place in Africa that has not been influenced in one way or another by humans in terms of offense, roads, inhabitants, hunting, persecution, poaching, planes flying overhead, like whatever the case is, there's somewhere or another have been influenced by them. So Madiba, good example, Kruger, good example, minor pools, like John has said, it is a wild area, but there are people staying there, there's poachers there, there's anti-poaching units, there's visitors, there's roads, there's pollution in the rivers, there's air pollution, there's all these kind of factors. So truly wildlife, yes, animals you'd have to go back and a few hundred years, never seen a human being, that kind of stuff, yes, absolutely. But I still believe, to echo John's sentiments, that an impala drinking from a man-made waterhole in a place like Madikwe, or elephants bathing from a freaking cement dam in Kruger, or whatever the case is, places like that, those animals are still wild. They, in terms of their response to the surroundings and the habitat they would find themselves within, yes, they still respond the same way as what they would have done 1,000 years ago. They still drink, they still feed, they still kill. And in that sense, yes, they are wild. In the sense of, are they untouched? Are they not influenced by human factors? No, I don't think there are many places, if any, in Africa that are left that fall under those factors. Thanks, just added to that. Now I'm off to Brown.
Yeah, Simon, thanks for a great question. And I think if you guys have watched, I'm not too sure where Gerry's going to put this in, but I think if you've watched Marlon and Jono's debate, what you'll see is that it actually really does depend on your background and what you've experienced and what you consider to be wildlife. So it's a very personal point of view. I think for someone that's coming out of, let's say, for example, the States and has never been to Africa before, and they rock up here and they go to the Lion Park outside here, for them, that is a wildlife experience. They get to see and feed a giraffe, they get to touch lion cubs, which is a whole different issue on its own. But what I'm saying is, for the vast majority of people, and coming from a South African background where we're very privileged, that is not a wildlife experience. We then start to look at it on a different scale. So is Kruger National Park wild? It has fences around it. Even though it's a massive piece of land, it's still not large enough to be managed or to be left alone, and it needs to be managed. As soon as you put a fence around an area, it needs to be managed. Is that system wild and natural? No, I don't think so. It's managed to some extent. The smaller reserve, the more intense your management has to be. Are the animals that live in there wildlife? 100%. They are not being assisted by anyone in any way. They are having to be managed and controlled, but they are still wildlife. And I think this is what is quite exciting, and I think from a South African perspective, once again, we could almost look at ourselves as being connoisseurs of wildlife safaris and photographic safaris, because we're starting to look for the best wildlife experience. And if you start to look at that, places like Botswana, Kenya, where you've got wild, free-roaming animals who are not controlled or restricted by fences. Yes, they will have some sort of human contact somewhere along the line, whether it's a homestead, a cattle kraal, or a sort of farming or whatever the case is, they do come into contact with people, but those are wild, free-roaming animals. And what excites me about those kind of destinations is that they are slowly but surely being put under a whole lot more pressure because of human expansion. So wildlife is a very broad term, and I like the way that you ended your question by saying, what is the difference? Is there wildlife and then wildlife? And I think you're quite right. I think there is. Weavers in your garden, wildlife, yes, and unfortunately they have been influenced by man-made things, like you said, planting of gardens and grasses and that sort of stuff. But that's what's also fascinating is that even in a city like Johannesburg, we've got owls. We've got black-backed jackal in the middle of Modderfontein. We've got flamingos that still come into these lakes and that sort of stuff. So, it's a bit of a catch-22, but I think you've hit the nail on the head by distinguishing between wildlife and wildlife. How you make that distinction is very much linked to your background and what you've been exposed to. So for me, what is wildlife photography? First prize is to get out into areas and find a lion that crouches down into a thicket and looks at a vehicle like it's the first time that it's ever seen a vehicle. That excites me. Driving into a lion sighting in Kruger National Park where it sleeps next to the road, it's still wildlife, it still excites me, but they're on different ends of the spectrum, I think.
Okay, so that makes for interesting viewing, I'm sure. Wildlife photography, when we look at wildlife specifically, is something wildlife. Now, everything that's been said, Marlon, I think, mentioned that if an animal can sustain itself in its environment, it's wild. Has an animal always been in a certain... I'm taking Madikwe again, for example, because I've got a background in there as well. Wildlife. What they say, when they brought animals in, when Madikwe was started, I think it was called Operation Phoenix, they didn't introduce animals, they reintroduced animals that was always naturally in that area. Now again, the whole debate about if you fence an area, is it still wildlife? Yes, I do think it is. I think lions, elephants, what else? Leopards, cheetah, rhino, they've never been domesticated and gone through generation after generation of being captive, it's a too strong word, and being used for something. These animals still, they fend for themselves, they drink, even if that man-made waterhole in the Kruger, in Madikwe, wherever, even if the animal drinks from that, it was his choice to go and drink there. This is a topic we can discuss again and again and again. So at this point, let me throw this out to you guys. What do you think is wildlife? What do you think is wildlife photography? Because let's discuss for a moment what it's not. There's a lot of photographers out there that do workshops, courses in zoos, okay, where they photograph lion cubs, zebra, rhino in a small enclosed little cage, and they call it wildlife photography. That is wrong. So we're talking photography-wise now. That is not wildlife photography. You are taking a photograph of a wild animal, but it's not in its natural environment out there doing what it wants to do. Agree? Disagree? It's a tough one because a lot of people make very good business of selling wildlife photography tours, workshops, but you get to shoot captive animals. To me, that doesn't work. I want to go to a place, and a wildlife photographic experience for me is heading out into the field and maybe not finding something to photograph. Maybe that's it. Maybe if I go out there wanting to photograph the big cats of the Masai Mara, I can go out there for a week. Look, it's highly unlikely, but I could go there and not see a single lion because they move around and they do their own thing. So maybe there's something in there for me that animals can do their own thing. I might not find them. Bless you, Penny. I might not find them. That to me is wildlife. Is that uncertainty. There's a certain X factor that you don't know what they're going to do, how they're going to react. Am I going to find them? Maybe the question of what is wildlife is answered in the question that, am I going to find them? It's a tough one. I want to know what you guys think. So while asking your questions for the next episode, tell me what you think is wildlife photography. And actually, Simon, I would like you to comment on this post and tell us what wildlife is. Your email doesn't count. I want to see it on Facebook. Comment below. Yes? Right. Guys, that's it for this episode. There's a whole bunch of questions we can look at tomorrow again, which includes compact cameras, image sizing, and then we're talking settings. A lot of you are asking about aperture versus shutter speed. Should I shoot wildlife in manual? So we're going to look at all of those. But still, like last time, send us more questions. We need your questions so that we can create this content for you. Anything wildlife, anything wild eye, anything. Ask us the questions and we'll get the team to answer them for you. My name is Gerry. I'm from Wild Eye. I'll see you next time.